Hello YouTube and welcome to another full series review. Today let's talk about the behemoth that is Like all of the other Replay shows, Replay 1988 follows a group of friends in their youth as you as the viewer try and figure out who the female lead will end up marrying. Now, Wikipedia will tell you that Duk Soyeon is the female lead, and while her character is incredibly lovable, I would argue that she's not the star of the show. This series truly belongs to the parents, especially these three mothers in particular. And while their characters are incredibly dynamic and their storylines are interesting, I was kind of disappointed as the group of friends are really pushed to the wayside. The vast majority of the screen time is devoted to these three mothers and their conversations and like their struggles as being mothers and being wives and, you know, also being themselves and trying to retain identity. And I became incredibly frustrated for much of the series as I didn't find their storylines quite as interesting, and I did fight the urge to skip ahead on several occasions. I think if you want to watch something with your mom or your grandma, their generation, or at least age demographic, is probably going to find this show a lot more relatable than I did, while I still, enjoyed it. So it could be a really good show to watch as a family. Now let's move on to more of the production side of things. And the production is top notch. I have no complaints here. The camera work is incredibly playful and has a lot of movement to it, which I really did enjoy. This show is gonna teach you patience, and that is both a good and a bad thing. Good in the fact that every single emotional beat hits the way it should. Because the show is so long, each episode is, I believe, over an hour, and the longest was, stop talking to me! And the longest was, I believe, an hour and 40 minutes. That's a long time. So all the emotional setup and the emotional development has a really strong foundation, and then when like the climax of that emotional arc happens, it's given the time to breathe and really sink in. Cried a couple of times and I laughed my ass off a couple of times. The comedy, even though it's not in there a lot, it has this very like inside joke kind of feel to it that like I really appreciated, just because it felt like I was being rewarded for all that time I was investing in this show. Because on the flip side, on the bad side of this, the show can feel long and can feel slow, and some people might get turned off just by the fact that the story really takes its time to tell. But you have to pay attention because the quiet moments are not just a moment to breathe. They are storytelling at its finest because they're showing you what you need to know and not telling you. Like, it's such a standard practice with writing, and it was so cool to see it happening on screen because I can think of several instances where a lot of character development was happening just by glances at a certain thing that really like full circled from like episodes ago. And if you're being a really attentive viewer like I try to be, you're gonna be able to guess who our female lead ends up with in the end, because the foreshadowing is so obvious. I think I would have actually been upset if at the end it had just been a misdirect, because everything is so deliberate with this show that I would have been frustrated if I had been wrong, because I would have thought, what was the point of that great moment in those little tiny scenes if I wasn't right? Now, talking about the love triangle, I really liked both of the the options. I thought they were both really compelling in separate ways. Like, you know, when you're walking down a forest path and like one will take you like deeper into the forest and one will go by the ocean, like both are amazing and will give you a certain experience, but neither one is better than the other. That's how I felt about this love triangle. Even though I could guess who she was going to end up with, I wasn't going to be angry if it didn't happen that way. Make sense? Because I liked them both. Although I am disappointed that, you know, when the two are actually in their relationship, the show glosses over a lot of the relationship's milestones. And I felt cheated. I'm still salty about it. Like, I want to see certain things that I feel I was robbed from. Also, the ending I have a real problem with. So if you don't want to know any spoilers, even though I'm not going to talk about, you know, the relationship side of spoilers, leave now. It is a great show. It's really well crafted. If you're a fan of family dramas, this is a family drama. You have to be willing to invest a lot of time with the parents. Like, a lot of time with the parents. I would watch this. I would give it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Is not a 5-star show because of the reasons I'm going to talk about, but if you're not into spoilers, go enjoy it. Have a good day, have a good night, see you next time. Okay. How do I say this? So, the voiceover in the final episode, in like the final few minutes of the final episode, gave the impression to me that it was really idolizing youth and romanticizing youth. And while youth does have a quality to it, I don't like it when it's put on this pedestal, because I feel lately, as I'm getting a little bit older, like I'm not old by any means, that I'm starting to give myself pressure because I'm already 23, and it's like, oh, like, I'm old now, but that's not true, you know, like, you don't reach 30 and then die. Like, you can always change and you can always evolve. So I don't like messages where, like, oh, we'll never be like how we were before, or blah blah blah. Like, it makes me feel really sad, and like watching that final scene and hearing these things, well, I guess reading these things, I felt really depressed. Like, afterwards, like, I didn't have an uplifting feeling at the end of the show the way, you know, I kind of felt all throughout, and simply because of that voiceover and because of what, like, our female lead was saying at the end. I just felt really... Part of me thinks, you know, that that's not really the message that the show is trying to tell you, that, like, once you get older, like, you're basically dead. Because it had such a focus on the parents, and the parents were still developing, and they were still people. But in the end, you don't see the parents again. Like, you don't flash to our female lead when she's older with her husband, and you don't get the parents. You don't see really any of the other friends. So it's really a show being told from the female lead all about reminiscing, and then at the end she kind of looks sad. She kind of looks like downtrodden. Like, I would have loved like a reunion almost, like, you know, in Reply 1997, like, everybody is getting together and you have this sense that their life is still happening, like, it's still moving forward even though they're older. With Reply 1988, you don't get that sense. You have a feeling that their life is now done, it is over. All the important stuff happened when they were young, and that's the only part of the story that they told you, because that's the only part that's important. I don't know if that made any sense, but I really felt sad afterwards, and I felt sad for, like, the rest of that night, because I wish the show had ended on a better note. Like, maybe them even talking on the phone and being like, oh, I'll see you next weekend or something. Like, just some small little nugget show that their life was still continuing and they were still having adventures even though they were older. I'm feeling sad just thinking about it. Like, when I think of this show now, I think of that bitter taste. And it's unfortunate, but it's what it is. Yeah. Have a good day. Have a good night. Bye.